I'm Don. It's late. I'm up. Hi. How are you guys tonight? Uh, Tonight we will be breaking the first rule of Fight Club, and we'll be talking about Fight Club. If you haven't seen David Fincher's masterpiece, I recommend you check this one out before you watch this. This is one of those that's going to be spoiler heavy because we can't really discuss the ins and outs of the movie while we're watching it if we don't have people who know what we're talking about, right? Sorry about that. I was distracted by a pop up. I don't know why I always forget to turn things off. I'm very an unprepared host. Anyways, tonight I'm going to be watching Fight Club. It's streaming on Max. I also own it on DVD, Blu-ray, etc. Um, it's one of the first DVDs I remember buying. It had an awesome dope box set, the like cardboard, soap package, and you open it up and it had all these special features. And that was one of the ones that was like special feature heavy. It was loaded, right? It had like four commentaries and all these making ofs and stuff. So, as far as physical media goes, that was one of the first like special edition awesomenesses. Let's see here. My friend Rob is here and he wants to know why I'm talking about this. Exactly, right? That's one of the amazing things about this movie is the don't talk about Fight Club. Because if you think about it, the movie has a twist to it. So as a rule for watching the movie and knowing about the book and everything, you don't talk about Fight Club. Don't ruin it for other people. But tonight I'm going to ruin it. Thank you for being here, Rob. That's my main man, Rob's Vintage Video. Ginger Ninja Maru, hello, Jason. How are you? We don't talk about it. See, he also does not talk about it. Part of the reason I want to talk about it is I have a very different viewpoint of this movie than a lot of folks, and I thought that's one of the things we would get to. Our friend Anthony Chabot is here. How are you doing, buddy? By the way, he's up to 2013 in his memoirs, and he got a copyright strike on his YouTube channel. Oh my goodness. Um, yeah, 2013, you're cranking it out. I remember when you were back in the 90s still. What happened with the copyright strike thing? Were you posting something you weren't supposed to post, or what happened? Folks are saying yo to one another. Anyways, yes, I'm going to be watching this one streaming tonight on Max, soon to be HBO Max again. It used to be HBO Max, but then they changed it to Max, and then now they're changing it back to HBO Max. So it's been a wild ride with this streaming service. At one point, it was HBO Go, and then it was HBO Now. You remember HBO Now? Yeah. Sheesh. Let me see here. Let's get this started. How are you folks in the chat doing? Fuffly gamer beef. Wow, you had gamer beef? That's terrible. Anyways, this one's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. I'm gonna go ahead and get this started because why beat around the bush? Let's just get at it, right? Um, this movie is awesome to me. It's one of my favorites of all time. You catch me on the right day, it's my favorite movie of all time. It's awesome on many levels. People use throw that around a lot, like, oh, it's so many levels. It's like, no, this one's got levels to it. So yeah, that's part of the reason I wanted to watch it and talk about it. To begin with, here's the 20th Century Fox logo. And I love the HBO fanfare, even in subtitles or captions. It's always like dun dun dun. It makes me happy. Um, Anthony says he's going to see How to Train Your Dragon. Next up is Megan 2.0. Yeah, I'm in between on Megan 2.0. The first one I was in between on. It was decent, but it wasn't like amazing. It wasn't as good as Chucky. I thought Companion was a better type of movie that like that. All right, so we're starting off, and it's funny. I watched this again the other night. My wife had never seen it before, so I wanted to watch it with her. Mrs. Night Owl loves a good, some of my favorites. So I thought I'd show her this one. And some of the graphics at the time when it came out, the CGI effects were so amazing and mind blowing. Like right now, we're pulling out of a man's brain. We're going through like his brain impulses and the nerve endings and the synapses and all these things while we have the title cards. So when you look at it, it looks dated and cheap. Like some of the effects later on when we're in the garbage can and looking at the coffee cups and stuff, dated and cheap. But some of it still stands up pretty good. Yeah, this is the Dust Brothers up front here. First off, like I was saying, I view this movie differently than other people. Most folks view it like think of it as like a crime drama thriller. And to me, it's straight satire. Like it's a comedy on the level of like Big Lebowski. Um, it's about a guy who spends the whole movie explaining how the world works to you and what a genius he is, and then it's revealed he's insane. So, um, like I say, this is why we don't talk about Fight Club because you're going to ruin it for other people. So once again, I point out if you haven't seen this movie, please watch it. But otherwise, here we are with the gun against his in his mouth, and we pull out from the pores, and you see like the skin and everything. Like the tracking shot came out through his brain. Here's first line of the movie: with a gun barrel in your mouth, you only speak in vowels. There's all these little like clever lines and witticisms. Every line is like that. Most of the lines later on are callbacks to previous things in the movie. Um, One of the sad things about this movie is it's kind of had like a cult of people who don't get it, and they've actually started fight clubs. And it's like that's totally the point of the movie. These people are insane. This is what they've come up with to, find some sort of meaning in their life and understanding of the world by punching each other in the head because they're that stupid. So the idea that real people are having fight clubs, it's like they're almost like the space monkeys in the movies. No matter what, you can't convince them this is stupid. They're just going to, think it's some clever new idea of looking at it. Let's see here. Oh, our buddy Texas is here. Hey, Ross, how you doing? Nice to see you. All this looks great. I'm a big fan of David Fincher. All this, I saw this after Seven and The Game, and of course Alien 3. Um, so his work in general, like, is top notch to me. He's always gonna be one of my favorite directors. But this was kind of the pinnacle of like his I think his best film. Super dark and shadowy, just like the comedy in it. This whole thing where he's got his face buried in between Meatloaf's man boobs. It's very humorous and funny, but at the same time, a lot of folks, see it as like this sort of thriller crime drama deal. Folks are saying hi to each other. I always like when folks in the chat get along. Everybody I hang out with and deal with is always the best people. So I recommend if you see folks' names pop up in comments or in the chat here, or feel free to check out their channels. Everybody here is an amazing creator. My friend Russell there, Texas, does some live streams like this. He always picks the best flicks. He's a great movie DJ. Jason Ginger Ninja, his movie reviews, off the hook. So yeah, here for part of more his like deep witticism about life. He's pontificating about how the world is going to eventually be corporatized, and even the universe is going to be corporatized, and the Starbucks galaxy and all this stuff. And he's right. I mean, this was made what 25 years ago, so he knew what was going to happen. The writer of this, Chuck Palahniuk. I never know how to say his name, but it was rewritten by Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven and The Game. He's kind of David Fincher's go-to rewriter. So a lot of adapting that novel to this book is the credit should go to Kevin Walker. Echo Ciro, nice to see you, my friend. Cha cha cha. Been a long time since I've watched this. Yeah, it's fantastic. Like I was saying, I watched it the other night with my wife. She wanted to check it out. Well, I told her it's a good one we should see. And we had recently watched Mr. Robot prior to this. And I had told her, we're going to watch Fight Club and you're going to learn some things about Mr. Robot. And sure enough, she was like, Mr. Robot's pretty much just Fight Club, the show. It's like, pretty much, yeah. And here he's going to the doctor's office and he's trying to get something to help him with his insomnia. And the doctor, kind of feeling like this dude's all on edge and, looking like a tweaker. So he's like, use valerian root or whatever. But then he's like, go to these support group meetings and see people who are really in pain. So there's the next kind of funny, dark comic thing in there. The dude becomes addicted to support groups. The support groups are supposed to be there to help you and help you get off of things and get over stuff. And instead, that's like his addiction. There's the second flash of Tyler Durden. Early on in the movie, there's these cut scenes before we actually meet Tyler and start hanging out with him, where just like one frame pops up of Tyler. And that's both to show that Edward Norton's character is starting to like, he's starting to realize he's there or starting to invent him or whatever. But it also refers to the scene where Tyler Durden goes and cuts pornography into children's films like one frame at a time. And the film even ends with one last shot in the credits of a big dong up on the screen. So this movie it has just endless little callbacks and levels and funny things going on with it that just every time I watch it, I see something I just really appreciate and laugh at. Ginger says he probably watches Fight Club once a year. Yeah, that's about right. This one, um, uh, well, Ginger also says it's Trauma Week. So if you're a fan of Trauma, be sure to check out Ginger's channel. Um, Probably watch Fight Club once a year. Yeah, Fight Club was one of those ones that it was kind of the last of its kind for me because all growing up, you'd go to the video store and you'd rent something, and then it'd be in your house for 3, 4 days, and then you would, take it back. But because you only had it for 3 days or whatever, you try to watch it really, a bunch. Like if you really liked it, you got like 4 viewings in before it went back to the video store. So same with cable. Like when we were all relying on cable, they would like overplay movies. If they had a big hit and they paid a lot to get a movie on their channel, it was like on all the time, the afternoon, evening, middle of the night. So sometimes I remember if you really fell in love with a movie, you would end up seeing it like 8 times over a week. And that's how Fight Club was. It was one of the last of its kind before streaming came along and everything ever was a click away. Well, a lot of stuff was a click away. I'm always fighting with what's not available for streaming. This part of the reason it took me so long to do this on the channel is it was frequently in and out of services I had. So it was like, I want to watch Fight Club. It's like, I guess I'll watch my disc. But since this is streaming on Max, I thought this was a fine time for us to check it out. Is Don breaking the rule of Fight Club? You're not talking about Fight Club? Exactly. Breaking all the rules here. Speaking of dongs, anyone seen 20 Years Later? No, I haven't yet. I'm actually anxious to see that one. 20, I didn't normally, if you told me there'd be a sequel to 28 Days Later, I would be like, eh. But then 28 weeks later turned out to be great. So now 28 years later, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I doubt I'll get to the theater for it, but for sure when it's available on streaming, I'll check it out immediately. So here's where Edward Norton's got his face buried in between Meatloaf's man boobs. Bob. And then there's kind of this funny thing where he's like crying on his chest, and when he pulls back, there's like the tears and the thing. It makes almost like a reflection of like a smiley face or like a sad face on their clown. Yeah, and then he's after this big traumatic like crying thing, he sleeps like a baby, so now he's just like, completely hooked. And then some of them he's at are just absurd, like getting over inner brain parasites and stuff. Yeah, like I say, most people I talk about with this movie, they see it as just like a thriller crime drama because of the twist, because of the pacing, because of the whole Project Mayhem stuff. Like, I think the fact of what a funny movie it is just gets way overlooked. And the casting is perfect. Like, that's one of the things that I immediately think of when I think of Fight Club is like, all right, we need the most basic everyman, who's like the most relatable, just like plain vanilla, like not particularly spectacular in any one direction, like in Idiocracy when they get or Luke Wilson to be like the most generic man ever. That's how Edward Norton is. He's just like he might as well just be plain white with the words "guy" on him. And then Brad Pitt is like the idealized concept of what anybody would think is a perfect life. It's like he's supposedly like the most handsome man in the world. He's the richest. He's got all these famous wives and celebrity, love affairs and everything. And he's on the cover of all these magazines. He gets to live a rock star lifestyle. So Brad Pitt's like the perfect, you know, who you would imagine if your life was everything, easy, perfect six pack abs. It's like that guy seems to have it together somehow. And there's another funny joke where he goes inside his cave to find his power animal, and his power animal's a penguin. Yeah, Fincher's directing style is fantastic. I mean, he's basically doing Ridley Scott. Like he even says Ridley Scott's like a huge influence on his style, but just like the crush the blacks, make everything super hard contrast, lots of shadows, all this stuff right here up front, lots of like greens, like a green filter to the film. And here's Helena Bonham Carter as Marla Singer. And I remember the first time watching this, hating her because you're on Edward Norton's side. And when she's sleeping with his best friend and just being kind of a hoe about it, and he loves her, or at least you can see that he loves her, even though he talks about how much he hates her. So the first time you watch it, you're just like, I don't like her. And then after you watch the movie, you're like, that poor woman. I feel terrible for her. Same with the boss. The first time you watch this, the boss is like the biggest douche, right? It's like, oh, I hate that boss. But then when you watch it the second time after you know what's going on, you're like, that boss. Imagine trying to deal with this guy every day at work. He just shows up with fresh bruises and he's bleeding. Yeah, even Edward Norton's clothes, they're just generic, or Jack, as he's often referred to, because of the whole thing later where he's like, I am Jack's spleen, I am Jack's medulla oblongata. There's another one of the Tyler flashes. And Tyler, dresses like a rock star. Edward Norton dresses kind of just basic and generic, looks like a repairman. And then Brad Pitt's got like sweatpants on, a leather jacket, a disco shirt, and Elvis glasses. Yeah. Uh, I saw it this past Sunday. Oh, did you like 28 Weeks Later? Getting back to a previous topic. I liked it a lot. It's going to be interesting since it's going to be a trilogy. Are we talking about the same thing? I'm so confused. What's the second rule, Night Owl? We don't talk about Fight Club, but we're going to talk about Fight Club. We're all about breaking the rules up here in the middle of the night. Um, and I thank you for joining me and hanging out and watching this with me. Like I said, this one, when I first started to do the channel, this is one of the ones I wanted to talk about. I was like, if there's any movie I could sit and talk about for 2 hours, it's Fight Club. Um, Here's one of the like darkest, saddest jokes like in movie history. The lady with cancer, Chloe, and before she dies, she wants somebody to have sex with her, and she's just like up there begging, like, "Hey, I got lube, I got whatever you need, man. Come by the place." And she's like the saddest, most pathetic woman. It's so darkly like the idea that it's sort of funny that she's like that is like tragic. Yeah, these support groups and just like him trying to figure out who he is at them while lying about who he is. And that's also part of the plot of the movie. He has no idea who he is. All these people he has different nights on these things is a different name, a different person, a different problem. So there is no real him. Jack is, you know it's like Batman and Bruce Wayne. It's like Jack is kind of just off on the side. The real character is Tyler Durden. And that's kind of what the movie gets at, that his name is Tyler Durden all along. He's just never figured out the person he wanted to be until he invented someone else. And anyways, Ben Grimm, it's nice to see you, buddy. Welcome. Ben's always got knowledgeable things to say. Ben's a big movie fan. He always is into the same stuff we're into, so it's always cool when Ben joins the conversation. So here's the part where he confronts her and lets her know, like, hey, I see you're a faker. And he has like this such like indignant attitude of accusing, like, hey, I see what you're up to, even though he's up to the exact same thing, like total hypocrite. But that's like most people who are sort of problematic. It's they don't see the things that they complain about in themselves. Another classic line: I saw you at melanoma, I saw you at tuberculosis, I saw you at testicular cancer. She's like, I saw you practicing this. Yeah, some of the dialogue is so witty and quick. It goes by. You don't even realize how clever it all is written. It's very tight. Oh, let's see here. A lot of this is still relevant today. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, just the whole stuff. I mean, I think part of the reason that those fight clubs I was talking about early do spring up is a lot of what this man says rings true. But like a lot of coming of age world, young man realizing his place in the world type movies, uh, his thoughts on life are sort of charming. Like, oh, he understands the corporate construction of how things are and how, we're no longer hunter gatherer type people. We're all reliant on electricity and the internet and whatever. So the idea of being a caveman, a man's man, someone who go out and hunt for his own food and all that, like I could see where that would come up with people. But like I say, ultimately, this dude's nuts. That's kind of the beauty of it. It's like he's got everything figured out. Oh no, wait a minute. He's crazy as the day is long. Here, you can have the tuberculosis support group. My smoking doesn't go well there. It's just so many good, awesome lines. once again, more Fincher amazingness. All this is just like tracking shots real fast. Even the stuff in the cities, the streets are shot super dark, and then like lots of neon lights, lots of street signs, and then of course he wets down the street, so everything's got the cool reflections. He sure does have that green filter, though. That's one of the things I notice about Mindhunter, his show on Netflix. Very green filter heavy. I feel like you're watching everything through like an avocado, like one of those old school ovens in like in the 70s or whatever, when everything's avocado. That's how everything looks in Mindhunter. The person I'm speaking about, David Fincher, the director of this, like I mentioned earlier, he's one of my favorites. I'm constantly amazed at the stuff he does and pulls off. Um, he took Alien 3. A lot of people hated that movie at the time, and it ended up being, it's kind of a cult classic now. A lot of people dig how dark and just like, I don't know, emo or something that movie is. It's all just so humid and uncomfortable and sticky, and Sigourney Weaver's bald, and she's in this creepy, scary prison. They totally turn the stakes up in Alien Cube. It's something different and weird, but that kind of fell flat on its face. And Fincher directed a lot of music videos around that same time. He did George Michael's Freedom 91, 92, whatever Freedom it was, and that video takes place in an old decrepit house that's like falling apart and dripping and leaking, just like the house they have in here. And then later on, he does Panic Room, which is also like kind of this like loving directorial. All the shots are very loving of the home, tracking shots up wooden banisters and along like the wood grain in the floor and stuff. So I think Fincher, part of the reason he got this is because of this old decrepit house. It's like, oh, he does that well. Here's another crazy cut. She's standing in the middle of the street, and then the bus goes by, and it's obviously a lockdown camera, and they pull her out, but it looks like she gets hit by the bus, and they use it as a transition cut for a scene. And here's the stuff I think this a lot of people don't understand that this is true. The whole concept of, a company figures out that they have a problem with one of their vehicles and it's going to cause X amount of deaths and X amount of lawsuits. So you figure out how much money that's going to cost you versus doing a recall. And if letting people die is cheaper, you just let people die. So a movie like this, it also is letting people know about kind of the awful corporatism that goes on. And that's sort of what drove him crazy in his own way. So when Jason talks about how it's relevant now, yeah, a bunch of this stuff is just keeps getting worse and worse. The microwave chicken cordon bleu hobby kit. Yeah, more of his like clever witticisms where he's like commenting on those single serving life and single serving friends and all that stuff. Nice. So yeah, there's another shot of Brad Pitt. There he's in the commercial for the whatever the hotel waiters, people. Later on, you see that's where he's working at. He's a hotel food terrorist. Alien 3. Ginger, where are you on Alien 3? I could see you hating it or I could see you loving it. Brother Max is here, party in the shower. Have you seen Killer or however you spell it with Michael Fassbender? Yeah, I did actually. I basically only watched it because of Fincher directing it. I enjoyed it. It was very slow and it's a very thinky movie. It's a lot like this. Um, this movie theoretically breaks the rules of filmmaking or proper filmmaking. Uh, Supposedly in screenwriting, if you have to have your character do any voiceover and explain anything to the audience, that's a failure. You're supposed to show, not tell. So this whole movie is nothing but voiceover, just like American Psycho, just like a bunch of movies that have come after it that have been very successful, and Killer is one of those. It's just the voiceover of the main character explaining his thoughts, going through his, a lot like this, telling us how he views the world. Um, but it's a whole bunch of downtime. Like they kind of stress that being a killer is a lot of just like waiting around for something to happen. So he's just, doing sit ups and push ups. And it's like a hangout movie with Michael Fassbender. And then there's a slight amount of like revenge killer thing in it. But some of the kills, some of the like revenge scenes where he catches up with the bad guys who did him wrong are pretty good. I enjoyed all that. But it ends kind of blah. Max says that's exactly why I watched it too for David Fincher. Yeah, that's why I watched Mindhunter. Did you ever watch what's it? House of Cards, the remake of the British show with Kevin Spacey and all that. Fantastic. You know, he was the producer of that and then directed a bunch of the episodes. That's a really good series to watch if you can tolerate political stuff. So here he's sitting next to Tyler for the first time on the plane. And here's where Tyler's explaining to him, like, look at these, safety cards, emergency crash landing at 30,000 feet, and their faces as calm as Hindu cows. And you start to see, well, Tyler's got a little bit of like viewpoint of the world too, and that's why they become buddies. They're both like slowly trying to figure out life together. The first time I saw this, it's kind of ridiculous. I could tell something was up. Like as you're watching it, you can tell there's some sort of mystery here, something I'm not understanding because there's too many weird interactions and pieces left out and stuff. I thought it was going to turn out this dude figured out that he was gay. Like this was some big like life journey for him to figure out, that he was in love with a man, not a woman. And I was trying to figure out what because there's clearly something going on. So when it turned out to be, the end, what it is, yeah, I kind of was like caught way off guard. I was like, well, I was out in left field on this one. Yeah, here's all this stuff where Tyler makes soap. Another strange, fascinating concept of this movie. Like, it's a sort of this throwaway thing. Tyler, takes the soap from or takes the fat from the liposuction places and turns it into soap, selling rich women their fat asses back to them, etc. Right. So, uh, the fact that they use that for the marketing, I mean, I think the bright pink soap catches people's eye, but like, like I say, the DVD set that was so awesome that I had was, and I later got the same thing on Blu-ray, it just was in, the Blu-ray plastic case. But everything was there because there's so much space on the Blu-ray compared to the DVD. But it was all like a soap package. It had the little, brown paper wrapper and everything on it with the string ties. And so the idea that they used soap is like one of their like main marketing ideas. Here's where he walks past the stewardess and he says, question of etiquette. Do I give her the butt or the crotch? And then when he walks by, of course, he gives her the crotch. Which cut did you watch of Alien Sea? The assembly cut's a little better, but less action, so drags in some scenes. Oh, what's going on, brother? He loves the idea of being the man, Tyler. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, this is well, the first time I watched this scene had me like howling. And it was one of them where I wasn't like laughing out loud like the Joker or something, but I just remember like sitting there just snickering to myself where he's talking about how his luggage is lost because there was something vibrating in it. And he's like, modern bombs don't tick, they vibrate. And he's like, it's 9 times out of 10, it's electric razor, but every now and then it's a dildo. And he's like, but I don't own a dildo. And the guy goes, and then he explains how in the corporate speak of when they fill out the paperwork, it's never your dildo, it's a dildo because we don't want to sign, blame to anybody for owning it and stuff. So ridiculous. And there's the same thing. He's caught up waiting for his rental car in his suitcase, but yet Tyler just goes and steals a car and drives away. You start to get the indication that Tyler's the man he wishes he would be. And then he gets out home and he sees his apartment's just completely on fire. I didn't mention earlier that dope scene up front where like he's going through and um, showing his apartment and filling it all, but it looks like a catalog, the old school like paper catalogs, where you'd see the pieces in the room with the prices above them and everything, and the little descriptions of his coffee table and stuff with little bubbles and imperfections, so you know that they were made by or handcrafted by the indigenous people of wherever. There's a yin yang coffee table. That is dope. I would get one of those though. Yeah, I remember this scene where they kind of explain here. They do the CGI through the apartment and you see the compressor click on and the big explosion or whatever. This looks mildly dated as far as CGI. But when I saw it at first, it like blew my mind because normal movies don't do that. The camera doesn't get that small and travel around through, kitchen equipment unless you're going to build a whole set of miniatures or whatever. So CGI had cool things that it brought along with it, but People abuse it too much. Yeah, here's the scene where they go into the oven, you see the pilot light kick on and all this stuff. Dope. Yeah, I mean, and some of these ideas up front, here where he's talking about basically throwing everything away, taking what you have and just getting rid of it all and being fresh. I mean, there's around this time too, there was like a minimalist movement where people were like clearing out a lot of the clutter and collection they had. That's where most of my friends, I thought a bunch of my DVDs came in my collection. People were just like, I don't want them anymore in my house. You can have these. You want the VHS? It's like, hell yeah. So yeah, I got two or three different friends' collections because they were just minimizing. They just wanted less stuff in their house, less clutter, less everything, and that's kind of what he's getting at. Just the things you own end up owning you, which is cool because I'm cool being owned by a DVD library. I should say disc library. It's probably about a third Blu-ray at this point. Payphones. Ugh. I've been watching a lot of Better Call Saul, and there's payphones all over the place. There's a payphone here. Like 20 something years ago, I had to shoot a 48-hour film contest. And actually, it was 24 hours. And you get, you go to a place at 5 o'clock, they give you a list of like three or four things that have to be in the movie. And then, you have to return a finished, 5-minute film the next day at 5 o'clock, right? So because of those things in the movie, you can't just like give them one of your old ones or something. And one of the things that was like needed to be in your movie was a payphone. And I remember just like driving around all night, Grand Rapids, Michigan, looking for a damn payphone. They were nowhere to be found. I never understood this. Tyler doesn't answer his phone, but then he just star 69s people and calls them back. I'm assuming he likes to be in control of the conversation or something. I don't know. Oh, hey, Sean is here. Funny to see you're seeing Fight Club since I watched it last week. First time in a while, too. Oh, I didn't know you had seen Fight Club last week. I saw you did Jaws the other night, and I was jealous because I was thinking about doing it too. I was like, oh, I can't double up on Sean's Jaws content. Yeah, I love me some Fight Club. I've been meaning to watch this one on the channel for a while because there's so much in it I like discussing. But it's one of those that's always off and on streaming. It's available and it's not available, et cetera, et cetera. So since it's been on Max, I wanted to at least make sure I got it put in the catalog. But thank you for joining us, Sean. I'm glad to see you here. Sean was watching Batman Begins earlier. If you guys want to check out that, or if you want to check out my Batman Begins, it's in the catalog, a couple of few back, as long as many of your other favorites. Darn near 100 live streams I'm approaching here. So if you'd like to check out any of the back catalog, I recommend you do so. Night Owl Movie Talk, YouTube. The homepage is laid out impeccably. Um, So here's the part where they're in the bar drinking, and Tyler's explaining to him about like how man has become this weak animal. He's no longer a hunter gatherer. He's got a duvet and 500 channels and stuff. And this is sort of where Jack falls in love with Tyler. He's like, "Hey, you think like I do," not realizing there's a reason for that. But yeah, this whole part here where he's explaining to him what a tragedy it is that his stuff is lost, and he's like, "Well, I guess it is just stuff." And then Tyler tries to get him to smoke, and he's like, "No, I don't smoke." And then, of course, later on in the movie, you see him smoking. There's actually a really cool scene where when he gets done beating up Jared Leto, he says, I wanted to put a bullet between the eyes of every panda who wouldn't fuck to save its race. I wanted to breathe smoke." And then in the background, you see Tyler Durden light up a cigarette. Like, there's all these things upon, at this point, this is probably my 20th viewing of this damn movie, maybe more. But yeah, even now, I still just notice tiny little things here and there that are like just awesome. Here's the classic scene that they use in all these like Warner Brothers home releases stuff. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. I want a keg of beer. Oh, I didn't do a stream for Fight Club. I watched it at home and realized I had the Blu-ray and I haven't seen the upgrade before. Oh, yeah, yeah. This is actually I was watching it. I'd seen it so many times on the DVD, and then later on I bought the Blu-ray because I love this movie so much. But watching it again, streaming in HD, I was caught off guard, just like I say about what a master director Fincher is. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. Um, oh, okay, good. Because I was going to say I didn't remember you doing a Fight Club stream, so I'm glad that I didn't miss it. Thanks for stopping by the stream, Don and Jason. Yeah, I love me some Batman Begins. Are you going to be doing all of them, or were you just doing? I know it's what the 20th anniversary of Batman Begins. What is it? 15th, 20th, 15th, 20th, whatever. Um, yeah, so I knew you were doing it for that. And I didn't know if you were going to do Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises as well. That whole Nolan trilogy is just fantastic. I did all three of those a couple months ago. Well, spanned over like a month. So here's the part where they explain a couple of interesting things. The cigarette burn concept. A lot of people. I remember being in movies my whole life and seeing that little dot, that would go up in the corner, and I never knew what that meant or was. I wasn't a projectionist as a 9-year-old. Um, so when they explain what that meant, it's like, oh well, that makes perfect sense. You got the multiple cameras, switch reels, da da da. So they explain, how the old theater projection stuff works. But then the thing where he splices in the pictures of a dong into these like family friendly movies, and you see like the kids crying. Yeah, all of this is just like Edward Norton explaining to the audience what's going on. From a writing standpoint, that's all bad. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to show everything. But in this movie, I don't know how you would do it any other way. It needs the narration. It's kind of so we feel like we see the world only through Edward Norton's eyes, and it's much easier to sympathize with him for as long as we can until we realize later on what's going on. Yeah, I'll be streaming The Dark Knight on Thursday and Rises on Sunday this week. Okay, so there you go. If you guys are fans of the Batman trilogy, the Nolan ones, be sure to check out Cinephile World Order. Our buddy Sean. So here it is, and this is another like just kind of funny scene. Like he's like, "I want you to hit me," and he's jumping up and down and getting loose, and he goes over and he takes two beers out of his pocket that he took from the bar. It's like that's just the type of dude Tyler Durden is. It's closing time, but he's gonna make sure he puts two bottles in his pocket. And this scene too, it's so funny because you're so used to seeing movies where the big punch comes, and you even expect it to be like the big like John Wayne, Jean Claude Van Damme, right cross. And instead, he hits him right in the ear because that's how it really is in a fight. Like it's not pretty and it's not like, ho, ho, ho. It's always like scratching and hair pulling and shirt. I don't think I've ever been in a fight where the neck of my shirt survived, right? And that's kind of that scene where he takes it in the ear and he's like, oh, yeah, I totally sympathize with that. And then they both come to the realization that it feels good. It's almost like a cutter mentality. They're so numb to life that the pain actually is something they can feel and grab onto. Which, there are a lot of folks who fall into that, unfortunate mental trap and are hurt themselves so they can feel something. So this, speaks to a certain audience or a state of thinking. Obviously, it's not a proper way of thinking. You shouldn't be hurting yourself. And if you are, I wish you would stop. Gosh darn it. Um, yeah, and then here after they've kicked their own ass, they're just sitting there on the curb drinking a beer together, like buddy buddy. And here they go to the Paper Street house. This house is kind of awesome. It's clearly condemned and no one should be living in it. But if you're going to squat somewhere, this like 10-bedroom old school mansion, big enough to ride a bike through. And they talk about how it's on Paper Street, which is, and he even mentions it later, the smell of paper smells like farts. Uh, when I went to college, University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, shout out Titans. Um, when I went there, there was a paper factory within, like, right near the area there, and it would just reek of farts in the air some days. Like the right lack of wind, the right release valve, whatever. So when he talks about it here, I sympathized right away. Like, yep, yep, I've that strange sulfury fart smell in the air. the water's rusty and brown, but it goes to show like his logic of what do you really need? Like how clean and nice and pretty does life have to be for you to survive? Once again, he's a crazy person. Hey, 59th survivor of VHS. Howdy, y'all. Welcome, 59th. Thunder won the Super Bowl. Woohoo, OKC. Yeah, I saw that they won. I've kind of been following that story since the beginning. When they traded Paul George to the Clippers and they got all those draft picks and Shea Gilgis. So when they got him and all that, and they've been slowly building with all these draft picks, I was like, eventually they're going to be good, hopefully. And yeah, it was nice to see them win. It was weird the Pacers made it. So there, that's been basketball talk during Fight Club. Um, yeah, welcome 59th. I was thinking about how my early 40s midlife crisis self reminds me of Tyler Durden. Yeah, I think Tyler kind of that's what he's there for. It's a guy who's grown up and now he's a man and he has no idea what to do with himself. When you're young, you're growing towards something, but once you're eventually that thing, it's like, well, now what? So here we start to see Fight Club like growing, like people wanting to get in on the fight and little like circles building up around them and stuff. They're golfing in the front yard. This house reminds me of the house in Nothing But Trouble, that Chevy Chase Dan Aykroyd joint. Sean says, "Aha, Super Bowl." Yeah, I know. My wife was very happy that the OKC got a big slam dunk or a big touchdown the other day. She said, "Oh, did they get a touchdown yet?" I was like, "Yep." So there's where he's reading the novel or the little like medical journals, and it says, I am Jax, whatever. And then when they list Edward Norton in the credits, or at least in the script and everything, he's just listed as Jack because you're not supposed to understand that it's Tyler Durden and Jack are the same person. Actually, I can't remember what it was. Some famous film critic hated this movie because it said it fundamentally breaks the laws of movie storytelling, where two people can't be one character. I was like, I think that's some straight horseshit. What about like Identity with John Cusack or a bunch of other things that I don't want to spoil for you. I had mentioned a TV show earlier after I said it. I was like, oops, I forgot. I shouldn't have spoiled that for you guys. But this idea, especially after this movie, really takes off and shows up a lot of places. Embrace the chaos, right? Eagles currently own the Super Bowl. Oh, that's right. That's why I knew Sean would stand up for Philadelphia. Getting dinner set. So glad you're running this. I need a run at this movie. They've ever seen this one before? 59th. Yeah, I'm a fan of this one. I remember that first time I when it came out, I had zero interest in seeing it because they marketed it as Fight Club. I thought it was like a Jean-Claude Van Damme type movie. It's a bunch of people having fights in a basement and underground fighting. Poor man's Mortal Kombat, whatever you want to call it, right? So I had no interest in seeing it. It didn't look funny or interesting to me, and uh, then word of mouth got around when people told me like, no, you need to see Fight Club. I went because there was, I had a date and there was nothing else in the theater to see. So we saw it and it was fantastic. Or another guy was like, oh, I rented it this past weekend and watched it like 8 times. So when I finally saw it, yeah, I was just, it was, I was knocked out. It was fantastic. I immediately, as soon as it was done, I put it back on while I was going to sleep because I wanted to just see all the places where they fooled me. Certain movies that do that, that's part of the charm of them. A movie like The Sixth Sense or something. As soon as it's over, you're like, I want to go back and watch all that again and see where they tricked me. Yeah, and here's the part where they're having like this PowerPoint presentation, and Edward Norton's face is just all beat up, black eye, and this guy's like, I know my man over here knows what's up with this, PowerPoint thing, and he just like shows him a mouth full of blood. So you can slowly see that Edward Norton's losing his mind. I'm looking at how many characters Mel Brooks will play in a single film. Yes, Bigfoot. I saw this in the theater. Yeah, I never did. I wish I would have. There's been many re-releases. Same with Big Lebowski. That's one I never saw in the theater, and I wish I would have. And since then, there's been a ton of re-releases, and somehow I still always miss them. Smiling all bloody. I watched this two times in the theater, then the DVD. It's always been around. Yeah, yeah. This is one you can watch over and over, even now. Just you catch me quoting lines from it and enjoying it. Here's a really cool Fincher shot. The Brad Pitt and Edward Norton walk in the bar. They pan around, and you see the other dudes in the Fight Club, and then this um, Neil. Jesus Christ, I forgot the joke. Um, the old buddy with the big sideburns comes walking through, and we see like the close up, and he's got like the whole posse behind him, and then the camera moves like tracking shot through the bar, so it's almost like this Goodfellas type thing where it's one or welcome to Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club: is you do not talk about Fight Club. Second rule is you do not talk about Fight Club. And I see y'all been breaking the rule because why are there so many damn people here? I don't know. I find it hard to believe you would get like 30 dudes just waiting to like punch the hell out of each other. But what are you gonna do? The once again, this is being filmed in a crappy old musty basement. There's all these like pipes and like dirty, rusty things, but Fincher makes it look fantastic. These old, like decrepit buildings and like just holes in the wall. He makes them look so cinematic and awesome. Normally this would look like crap. And here's where Ricky, the kid from The Office, beats up a maitre d' at a food court. Why would you need a maitre d' at a food court? Fight Club is a self-help therapy movie. Yeah, it basically is. um, yeah, I mean it's in its own way. It's like a I don't know, any coming of age movie. This guy kind of learns about himself and accepts his place in the world and figures out what it means to be a man. Yada yada yada. In the big picture, it's no different from Goodwill Hunting or whatever. It's just this is the insane, hilarious version. But even some of these shots, they're like so framed, almost like comic booky. Like they're perfect. The way I don't know, Fincher's directing style is just so amazing. Like the camera placement and the decisions of when to make movements and when not to and stuff. He shoots exteriors better than anyone. Like if you need to see the outside of a building, David Fincher will nail that for you. And then there's a lot of, like I say, there's a bunch of callbacks in this movie. Here's one where like this guy on the bus like walks by him and kind of bumps him in the shoulder as he walks by. And then later on, the next fight, we see him fighting with him. There's the same thing where he tells everybody when Lou, who owns the bar, the sign out front says Lou's Tap. I'm fucking Lou. Like that guy after that thing, Brad Pitt, gives the assignment to everybody, go out and get in a fight. And there's a part where a guy working at a gas station or whatever, I think an auto body shop, is spraying a hose, and he sprays a preacher, like a reverend, when he walks by a priest. And the priest and him get in a fight, and then the next shot in the Fight Club, there's the priest and that dude fighting, rolling around on the floor. A lot of this stuff is carryover from scene to scene like that. Most people don't even notice it. Food Court Taco Bell, the future Demolition Man, is a fine dining restaurant because it's the only one to survive the franchise wars of 2032. This is true. Unless it's you're in what, Europe, and it's Pizza Hut or whatever it is. The classic Taco Bell wars from Demolition Man. The other day I was in a bathroom and there was three seashells in there. I mean, it was just supposed to be like kind of a sea motif or whatever, but as soon as I saw the three seashells, I'm like, you got to be shitting me. I don't want to explain to the people who own this house that I accidentally used these the wrong way. That master, in death we have a name, and his name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson. His name is Nate Patmaster. Nate! Yeah. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining me, my friend. I'm glad to have you here. Haven't seen my friend Nate in a while. Nate's an awesome dude. Big heart, kind soul, cool MFer. Yeah, here's where he pulls one of his own. He's brushing his teeth and he realizes one of his teeth is loose and comes out, from getting punched in the head repeatedly. And Brad Pitt, Tyler Durden turns to him and is like, "Well, hey, even the Mona Lisa's falling apart." He's having this phone conversation with Marla, and then Brad Pitt's in the background. Tyler's doing with the nunchucks because it's just supposed to show like no matter what seriousness is going on, Tyler in the back of his mind is just having fun, you know, doing the most rock and roll thing possible. Yo, Paps, love brother, much love, much love. Yes, we all love us some Nate here. Nate's the man. So here's where Marla calls him, and she's like, she's trying to know what's up with him because she's like, I started cheating and going to the meetings that you were supposed to only have, and I realized you weren't there anymore. So then she's like, I just took a bunch of Xanax, and it's probably not a real, attempt on my life. It's probably just a cry for help. You know, some of the jokes in the part where she's like, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. Like some of the lines, like there's a whole on the disc, there's a deleted scene of just all the different things they came up with Marlo to say. So there's like one, she's like, I want you to be my first abortion. Like just the sickest like things for someone to say post sex ever. Here's the crazy 3D scene where it's like bodies merge. This is I don't know, the CGI on this doesn't stand up as much. It's kind of this crazy new age art where everything's blurry and funky and you see them going through a night of fun and she's smoking while doing it. Good for her. But yeah, it's a little I don't know, a little blurry and weird. Did you read the book? No, I own the book actually. And welcome, Sarah D. And I don't know if you've been here before. Glad to have you here. No, I own the book. I've always wanted to. Chuck Palahniuk, or however you say his name, Chuck Palahniuk. I've found him to be super interesting. He does a commentary track on the original disc for this, and Andrew Kevin Walker, who did the adaptation of it, he said that Chuck's work is just kind of outstanding and amazing. What's the name of that other movie? The one with Sam Rockwell, Chuck Palahniuk wrote as well. I can't think of what it is. It's about him being a sex addict. So here's one of the first indications where they have sex the first morning, at night, and then the next morning, Edward Norton's back to Edward Norton, and being cold to her, and she's doesn't understand why. But we, as the audience, think like she's kind of hoeing around with his best friend. My Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas on book and Criterion Collection DVD, and Howdy Sarah. Yeah, Howdy Sarah. Super consumable book. It's a quickish read and definitely worth it. Yeah, like I say, the kind of the charm of this movie is Jack's narration, and it's so well written and so clever, and there's lots of like little just observations on life that are supposed to endear you to Edward Norton's character. And then, like I say, ultimately they pull the rug out, and you're like, by the way, he's completely nuts. Disregard everything he says. He's a problem. Yeah, it wasn't a thick book. Totally digging it out. I love physical media. Yeah, the um, I believe somebody gave it to me in paperback because they knew how much I liked the movie, and I recall it not being that large. So here's one of the misdirects of the movie. Instead of Jack showing up, Tyler shows up, and she's like, "Did I call you or did you call me?" So we think that it's Tyler, but really it's Edward Norton's alter ego, and they're just tricking us with camera work. But there's like this crazy awesome scene coming up here when she admits she called the cops on her own attempt on her life. And then he's like boogieing. So he's pulling her out of the apartment and then he sees the cops coming and then he like pulls her into a little like hallway. And he's like doing this dance, like they're just all kicking it all night. I don't know. That's great improv. Like Brad Pitt, tip of the cap, my friend. You're always killing it. Physical media can get you through some shit, right? I know. There's been so many times I'm like, you know what I need to watch is blank, and you go to watch it and it's just not there. Like, I wanted to watch The Thing, John Carpenter, Kurt Russell, and I put it on. Prime says they have it, but when you dig deeper, it's like no, Universal Monsters Live channel on Prime has it, and you can catch it like on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. It's like, damn it, I'm going backwards. What happened to pressing a button, getting it on demand? It's called physical media. That's the problem. Unfortunately, we have a small place and we have three kids. Well, two little ones and a baby. So I don't have room to set up my whole video collection library because it would take up one whole damn room. So it's like, well, the kids could sleep in the living room and this is my movie library. Speaking of kids, I did want to mention. Oh, let's see here. See some folks saying hi. The book is actually more satisfying to me than the movie, and especially the ending. Well, I think, yeah, even the story itself kind of lends to being a book. Like I was kind of mentioning earlier, the narration is supposedly a no-no in filmmaking because that's one of the advantages books have. We hear the inner monologue and dialogue of the characters. So in a thing like this where we're constantly hearing what's going on in his head instead of seeing it play out in drama. Like when you go see a play, there usually isn't somebody who comes and stands in front of the audience and just like reads from in front of a microphone while the play acts out. You're supposed to show it all with the story. So like this, where he's just explaining everything in the book, I imagine, yeah, you really get wrapped up in the characters. I'd be interested. Did you read the book before you saw the movie? Because I want to know like how people imagine Jack and how people imagine Tyler. They're not much different, but hello, what up, Ginger Ninja? Yeah, welcome, Sarah. Glad to have you here. I was going to say, mentioning my children, my son has been asking me to inherit the movie channel when I eventually retire or die. I think he's trying to bump me off. So today, when he knew I was doing a show, he gave me this to read. Hi, Night Owls. It's Young Owl here. Valentino. Um, Let's see. I wanted to get a chance to see you soon, and my channel is coming soon. My goal is 1 million, and my dad's is too. So please get us to 1 million. And coming to Night Owl Movie Talk soon, and you'll hear a lot about that later. Love you, Young Owl. So he gave me a note to read like a ransom letter. So there, I read it, so I don't end up in trouble or whatever. But oh, another hilarious quiet scene. That's fun to talk about my son's letter immediately after this. It's where he hears noises coming from Tyler's room, and he goes over and he kind of peeks through the door, and the door gets pulled open immediately by Tyler, and he's like, "What are you doing out there? Like being a peeping tom?" And when he opens the door, you can see like she's off the bed in a complete sex daze, like she doesn't know what's going on, and he's naked with one rubber glove. It's like I don't know what y'all are doing, but it sounds fun. Night Owl Junior, right? I read it 10 years ago in high school. I reread it every once in a while. Oh, she did. Yeah, that's one of the things I would wonder. To me, I was mentioning earlier. I feel like Edward Norton and Brad Pitt are perfect like casting for this. Edward Norton's very average-ish. He's just very kind of plain in his own way. He's super smart, very talented actor. If you've ever seen Primal Fear, he's awesome in it. But he's just plain. And then, Brad Pitt's this, rock star, superstar of the world, doing commercials in Japan and all this stuff, dating all these famous actresses and models and stuff, and, perfect six pack abs, world's People magazine's most handsome man. It's like, yeah, it seems like if I was going to outsource my life to somebody, he's doing okay. So here's where the cops call Edward Norton and explain to him, we pretty much sure somebody blew up your apartment and we think it was you. And he gives like this whole thing. I loved every stick of furniture in that place. It defined me. And he's like, my submission to the academy. So green. Once again, Fincher with the green filters. This police station, it looks like it were. I don't know. It looks like we're in the woods or something. I like that Tyler Durden's bathrobe is just like kind of this like grandma's bathrobe with like these coffee cups that are steaming and stuff. Clearly, you found it in the garbage somewhere or whatever. Back to my 9 to 5. All right, Jason, be back later. Good man. I appreciate you hanging out for us, and be sure to come back soon. We are at the 120. No, we're at the 57:47 mark, so just under 58 minutes. Um, there's an hour and 21 minutes left. This is one of the few movies I feel like the 2 hour, 20-minute mark is okay. I think it could be a little tighter. Generally, when a movie goes past 2 hours, I start complaining. But this one, it flows and it moves. It's got a real pace to it, like especially the way Fincher directs and edits. A lot of the like whip pan edits and stuff really keep it moving. It feels like we're always progressing. I think after later on when he puts together that he is Tyler Durden, and then he's starting to try to figure out like if Tyler knows it, I know it. Wait a minute, Tyler probably spent all day trying not to think about it, so I wouldn't know. When we get into all that, it gets a little bogged down. But the mystery of everything built, of what's going on, like running at the same time as the story of him and Project Mayhem and the Space Monkeys and all that. That's pretty amazing. Ginger Ninja Howdy Broski found a mint condition Florid gum to use the 45 cents. Was it a rummage sale? So now here Marla gets her chance to do one of her little soliloquies. These people, they all have these funny things and thoughts on life. And she explains how, um, the condom is the glass slipper of our generation. You wear it, you dance all night, and then you throw it away or whatever. And then she's talking about this dress that she has on, and she's like, "It's a bridesmaid's dress. Somebody loved it for one day, and then they threw it away and never thought about it again." And, like she's just this, just I don't know, kind of melancholy poet, sort of emo goth chick. Like I guess emo and goth are opposed to one another, but you know what I mean. There's just something about her. She's more Sylvia Plath than she is like Sandra Bullock. And then there, yeah, he explains how I'm 9 years old again, passing messages between my parents. And it sort of alludes to like, some of the stuff from his life that messed him up. And they talk about later on about how his dad's had several families. Like he'll, get married, have a few kids, then leave that family, go somewhere, get married, have a few kids. And Tyler's like, he's setting up franchises. Just like a clever modern day look at a lot of these things. I feel like this is kind of up there with like The Graduate and some of these other. That's probably the closest cousin to this, I would think. Sort of a coming of age movie, but real dark and cynical. But the dialogue is witty and hilarious. That's why I say a lot of people, when people don't think that it's a funny movie, I'm always caught off guard. It's like the whole thing's a comedy. So here, yeah, here's more dark satirical comedy where they go steal the fat from the liposuction center. And then the part where he throws the big bag of fat over the top of the barbed wire and it rips open and it just pours all over them and they're making noises about how disgusting it smells. And I just, once again, there's Brad Pitt and like the crazy, wild, big colors and, the hood hanging out of the back and shoes that are bright orange. And then Edward Norton's got like this, like plaid member or like a plain members only jacket, like tan, just to contrast in characters, who he wishes he was versus who he really is. Yeah, sorry, I'm making the face because there's where the gross fat bag breaks open. I remember in the commentary, David Fincher talking about like how ridiculous it was for like these conversations with the special effects people of like, well, we're trying to get the fat just right. Like this one is like I got a little cream corn in it to give it some consistency, but this one you have to put like dried fat from pork chops in it. And then here's a lot of this anarchist cookbook kind of stuff where he explains, like, you can take sodium nitrate and a dash of sawdust and add it to orange juice concentrate and get napalm. There's actually like two ingredients missing. I remember them saying that in the commentary too, because there's like that basically is you can make napalm with what they described there. It's just you need like I don't know some sort of gasoline or something. Once again, Tyler with a flowered shirt and Jack in a gray shirt. Here's the part where he puts the acid on his hand and he gives it a kiss. And it's like this creepy kind of like, I don't know, like we see it first person and ride out his pain with them and everything. And then later on, we see that he's been doing it to all these other dudes too. And there's this weird feeling of jealousy because he doesn't understand that Tyler is him. Yeah, and here's where he's trying to talk him through his pain and accepting, the pain that goes around him that you can't control. And, he's just rambling this like Charles Manson stuff about being the first space monkey shot into space and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, you are totally nuts. Oh, wait a minute, you're me. We are totally nuts. What you're feeling is premature enlightenment. There's the funny part. He's having a hallucination and he dreams like he walks up on Marla and it's almost like this romantic ass like picture from a perfume commercial or something. She's laying in the ice cave and he walks down and kneels down below her and he puts his hand right between her legs and he leans in to kiss her and she blows out a puff of cigarette smoke in his face. God does not like you. He does not want you. In all probability, he hates you. We don't need him. Yeah, it's just all like the inner monologue of someone trying to figure out life. But like I say, dude's totally schizophrenic and insane. Earlier we were talking about Fincher. Getting back to that, while I'm kind of entranced in this, this is all like super heavy, shaky camera work, and a lot of it's fun to watch and it's interesting, but it's just sort of like takes its time. Um, Fincher stuff, like I mentioned earlier, The Game and Seven and Fight Club being all kind of bunched together. That's when I fell in love with him as a director. And then when I heard they were making a movie about Facebook, I was like, that's going to be the biggest stinker. I have no idea. I have no interest in watching the Facebook movie whatsoever. And I was like, nope, David Fincher, once again, even made a movie about Facebook interesting. Um, and then like something like Benjamin Button, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. A lot of people don't like that movie. They think it's very like, kind of, it's almost like Forrest Gump in its own way. It's like kind of just this man who lives an entire life and it's, this things that happen in his lifetime. But I watched it again about a year ago. It was on TV and I was flipping by and I just put it on because I was half tired, not paying attention to the TV anyways. And just the little bit I was paying attention to it, it's kind of a beautiful, amazing, masterful movie that has a lot of really amazing ideas. Um, when you factor that in with his work on the TV, the House of Cards and the um, uh, Mind Hunters. Jesus, I can't believe I forgot Mind Hunters. But yeah, that he's been all over the place and produced so much stuff. But I kind of miss Zodiac. I forgot about Zodiac, another classic Fincher big screen. Zodiac's one the first time I watched it, I was like, eh. And then like the second time or third time I saw it, I fell in love with it. That's when I have like an awesome box set of it. Looks like it's a VHS tape being mailed and it's got the wrapper on it. When you open it up, the disc and inside looks like a VHS or a cassette tape. And like here, when he explains to his boss, like if you keep hassling me about these pieces of paper you find in the Xerox machine, I might have to go through and have like a workplace violence incident. And like before this happened, that wasn't a common thing. Like you could almost make jokes about it. Now, there's so many mass shootings and whatever, you can't really make that as comedy. But once again, another instance where it's like the boss is like a total jerk. But then later on, when you realize what's going on, you're like, that poor man. Once again, perfectly framed shots, all amazing. Now here's a blue filter. Lots of yeah, same just lots of shadows, contrast, everything looks kind of just dark and lived in, but it also looks sort of beautiful in its own sort of dirty way. Here's where she tells him, I think I have breast cancer, and it's really just like a seduction technique, which give me a break. Like I think I have a lump in my chest and you're supposed to come over and feel her boob and get excited from it. It's like I'm worried about your health and safety. I'm not getting turned on. And then she gets mad because he doesn't get turned on by it. Yeah, and we see this is where we think that she's kind of doing what she's doing with Tyler. And then when Jack comes over here, we sort of feel like, yeah, she is sort of, I don't know, all over the place. She's the problem, not him. And once again, later on, when you learn what's going on, you're like, that poor woman. Right now, while Edward Norton is standing outside of the hotel, deep in thought, this would be a great time to point out the pinned comment up top at the chat is a link to Night Owl Movie Talk merch. Feel free to check that out. Every little T-shirt or blanket or pair of socks or whatever helps. I got baby diapers to buy. Otherwise, I often pin that to the top of the comment section, or you can usually find it in the description. So feel free to buy some Night Owl Movie Talk merch. Or there's a bunch of links in my description for uh, how to buy this movie on Amazon or how to get um, the stuff I use to make my show if you'd like to make a show like this. So the links for that are usually all in the description. Feel free to follow those and get me a tiny commission through the good people at Amazon. Now back to stop shilling myself and back to this movie. Edward Norton's out walking around. He just left Marla Singer's apartment, and Meatloaf comes walking up to him. And it's kind of funny. David Fincher mentioned, Meatloaf was always this big, huge, heavy set guy. And then he lost all this weight. And it was like he was on the cover of magazines, like holding his pants out and stuff. Like Meatloaf finally gets in shape or whatever. And then he lands this role and he has to put on a big fat suit and carry it around. And here's where Meatloaf explains to him the legend of Tyler Durden. Supposedly, he was born in a mental institute and he only sleeps 1 hour a night. There's Bob's big bouncing boobs in the middle of the fight. And it's funny, Bob beats him. Like Bob just grabs him in the big bear hug and like cracks his skull. Good for Meatloaf. Meatloaf, I believe he passed away recently, didn't he? I believe so. Before I give any Meatloaf eulogies, let's make sure that's a thing. Yeah, January 20th, 2022. So he died in 2022. God bless him. These 2 years without him have been hard. Um, I don't know. My mom loved Meatloaf when I was a kid. She had the best. What is it? Like a Bat Out of Hell or whatever. The Paradise by the Dashboard Lights and all that. I mainly think of Meatloaf from Rocky Horror Picture Show and this. Here's where Tyler gives another one of his big speeches, talking about an entire generation of, people pumping gas and waiting tables and their whole life they were conditioned to think they'd be rock stars and movie gods and all this stuff, but they realized that they're not, and now they're angry and there's this whole like rebellion of wasted people and stuff. Just all real smart, intelligent writing that, speaks to the thoughts of people who, you know, f- start fight clubs. But at the same time, it's totally insane. And later on, when he says, we thought we'd be rock gods and all this, he walks by Jared Leto, like right as he says movie stars and rock gods. Yeah, we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars. And he looks Jared Leto right in the face. I'm not a violent person, but I gotta admit, there's something therapeutic about that part where Jared Leto just gets his face completely smashed in. I like Jared Leto. He's fun and nice enough, but if there's anybody who could probably use a good pounding, here's Lou. We've been waiting for Lou. This guy comes in. You see the sign out front? It says Lou's Tavern. I'm Sporkin' Lou. And then this part is crazy where he lets Lou beat him up and then he drips like blood in his mouth and he tells him, "You don't know where I've been." And like in the 90s, still, things like AIDS and all that were a much bigger concern than they are now. So the idea of someone bleeding into your mouth is probably worse than just about anything. Imagine NECA making a Bob figure, right? I would actually buy that one. That'd be kind of dope. Big world gym with big giant jugs. You should join our club. Yeah, so here's where Brad Pitt's getting beat up by, sorry, Tyler Durden is getting beaten up by Lou. I remember after I saw this movie, my parents got a new puppy. So they let me name him, and we were seeing what he would answer to, and when I started calling him Tyler, immediately he took to it. So we had Tyler Durden the dog for like I don't know 15 years or whatever. Little tiny black Yorkie Pomeranian thing, like Yorkie poodle, I should say. So there's this little shadow dog following you around, Tyler Durden. Goes along with the dog we had before him, the Shih Tzu named Tribbles. And when I was a little kid, we had a dog named Yoda. That's what you get when you let me name the pet. Don't let me name a dog the dude. Now, here earlier when I talked about the punches, right? Like when he punches or when Edward Norton punches Tyler Durden in the ear, and it's so like wrong, it doesn't feel like a movie punch. It feels like a real street fight punch. Like, ow, you kind of even feel the pain when you look at it. Here, these are movie punches. These are Indiana Jones and that bald dude in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The big, heavy bass rumbles with every punch. Yeah, and here's where he's just on top of him, dripping blood into his mouth. He's like, "You don't know where I've been." Yeah, he got in Lou's head. Please let us keep it. Please, Lou. And then once again, the legend of Tyler Durden and what a crazy man he is sticks with it, just even grows. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier at the start of the movie, that you know the idea that the casting is so perfect, and then the whole thing where the people in real life behave the way the space monkeys in the movie do, where you can't convince them that this is all insanity, that they think it's some brilliant master plan. But like every aspect of the movie, just even the cast, like yeah, the background casting, the Meatloaf, what a perfect, lovable, huggable guy. I mean, I'm sure they probably went out to like John Goodman or George Wendt or something first, but Meatloaf's not a bad choice. So here's where he explains you're going to get in a fight and you're going to lose. Yeah, here's where he's spraying water on folks. And then later on he gets into the fight with the priest. And then the next time we see Fight Club, you see the priest in the Fight Club fighting. The Project Mayhem stuff is funny to me, and it's got a lot of like social messaging and stuff, but it's really just a distraction from the um Tyler Durden plot. It's supposed to give you something else to focus on so you don't think about what could be going on between these two. There, he, the priest, he knocked the Bible out of his hand and sprayed his Bible, and then the priest gives him a big like, this is like the weakest punch, which is funny because every now and then you see, a real fight like MMA or whatever, people know what they're doing. But 9 times out of 10, when you see a fight, it looks like how the fights here look, where it's just smacking and trying to cover your face and pulling hair and pulling shirts and stuff. Like it doesn't look like the manly fisticuffs pugilist fight that you think of in movies. So here's where he gets into the fight in his boss's office. I am Jack's complete lack of utter surprise. Yeah, he beats the living hell out of himself here. And just some of the scenes, like they do the Die Hard thing where he has to put his bare skin on crunchy broken glass and it's standing up and it's all just disgusting. And you feel the pain of this scene. Speaking of feeling the pain, I Hope in the background you guys don't hear my baby crying. My 8-month-old is apparently awake and Mrs. Night Owl's taking care of her. I hear her crying in the background. I told her at any point if she's too much, just come out here and she can watch Fight Club with me. She's watched Evil Dead 2 and most of Breaking Bad and yeah, most horror movies I've watched within the last 6 months. The baby has been around OC. At one point, she woke up during Basic Instinct. I was like, well, I hope she figures this out. There's Jack smirking revenge when he punches himself in the face. And this is all like, I mean, this dude is pain. The him getting beaten up looks incredibly painful. Like I mentioned, the stuff where he's rolling around on the broken glass and he's like pushing himself through these like the bookshelves and everything and cracking his head. But it's also like super comedic, somehow. And then, like I say later on, when you know what's going on with the story, and you go back and you look at this, and you're like, this poor boss. He has to deal with this complete lunatic at work every day. But instead, from our point of view and the audience, it's like, oh, this douche nozzle boss, I hate him. Funko has some Edward labeled narrator. Blah, blah, blah. Let me try that over. Take two. Funko has one of Edward labeled narrator, like as a spoiler-free item that I hate that non-function plastic. I need magnetic tape with my. Um, yeah, like I say, I believe in some of the story they call him narrator, and other times they call him Jack, because they got to figure out some way to not let people know what's going on before you get to the middle. So then, yeah, he's been beating himself up. He's covered in blood, and he climbs up his boss and is looking him in the eye and begging him for whatever. And then that's when security busts in, and it looks like he's been beating his ass. And that's how he got corporate funding. Leave, leaving work so proud and happy of himself, just covered in blood. But he's just like, haha, I won. The victory in defeat. Yeah, there's the preacher or the priest fighting with the dude. And here's where they explain that Tyler's getting sued because of all the disgusting stuff he'd been putting in food at the hotel. Yeah, the looks on their faces. Now he's giving out assignments and everything. So yeah, this is where they're going to go. I think attack the. Yeah, they are tearing down the TV antennas on top of buildings and smashing them, and then they go demagnetize all the tapes at Blockbuster. A lot of people I don't think would get that joke nowadays. Like the VHS tapes, you could take a magnet to them and demagnetize them. You need like a big powerful electromagnetic magnet. Mouth no mouthing today. You need like a powerful elect an electromagnet to demagnetize them and make the tapes mess up. I don't know if you could do a whole tape like they make it look like, but I don't know what you can do to DVDs. Throw acid on them. And then when this came out is right around the time they reissued the VW Bug. So when they're going through smashing cars with the baseball bats, they stop at the new VW Bug and they like start cracking up. And here we see him putting the bird feed on top of the car lot, so the car poops so the birds poop all over the cars. I remember the first time seeing that, like, what are they doing? And then when you realize, like, oh, that's pretty disgusting and awesome. My power animal is Dogman. Yeah, I believe you on that one. The penguin that slides. Slide. Microwave DVDs, they crackle. I've never tried that. That sounds good. Uh, not recommended. Yeah, I would imagine anything that causes popping inside your microwave is bad. Okay. So now this part is where it first starts to get questionable. Like even up through the sort of like mayhem for Project Mayhem that they're doing. Like I say, the bird feed on the car lot and smashing up the TV antennas and whatever. But here, where he like puts a gun to the head of this liquor store dude and tells him you've got 6 months to be a veterinarian or I'm going to come find you. Like this is where we're kind of, you know, like you tap out on Tyler almost. Like, all right, this is going too far. And even Edward Norton he's in the background. Like this is where Tyler sort of takes over and dominant, and the Jack character is in the background. Like he's no longer the driving force, and Tyler's trying to steer him. He's just along for the ride at this point. Tyler's all in charge. Which, when you kind of know the plot of the movie and you understand, it's like, okay, well, this side of his personality's taken over more and running the show more, and this guy's a good actor. The guy who's like crying and he barely speaks English and he's like kind of just half rambling. Too much school, too much school. DVDs are going through disc rot, warps and bubbling, discoloration. Yeah, I know that there's a certain, especially, what is it? I can't remember which brand it was from a certain year in particularly. I can't remember at what point, but basically, what it is the DVD is pressed onto like aluminum. And it's a plastic cover, and then the disc itself is like an aluminum, sheet, and then there's another thing or whatever. So what happens is the inside of the discs aren't completely sealed properly, or the outsides aren't, or whatever. So rusting and oxidization can get at the metal in your discs. Um, so yeah, some old DVDs have started to not work because of just existing. Air has gotten to them and is starting to make the discs, rust on the inside. VHS, their big enemy is moisture more than anything, and DVDs heat. Heat will mess them up too because they'll warp them. You know, eventually they'll get these streaming issues worked out and things will be smoother on that front, and there'll be some sort of you know agreements over what movies are where and everything. But until they do, physical media is still probably your best bet if you really want to have something you love when you want it. So there they blow up the Apple store. That's a pretty big explosion that fills up the screen. I think this stuff is the stuff that confuses people, like the explosions and the terrorist stuff. Like I think that's where people get like don't see it as a comedy anymore, and they see it as sort of like an action crime drama thriller type thing. Here's where the camera's all shaking and off reels, and Brad Pitt explains to people that we're the all singing, all dancing crap of the world, and it like literally causes the frame, the camera being pulled through the lens, the film being pulled through the camera to shake. He's so powerful, he's breaking out of the movie. And now here's another morning of after a night of sex between Jack and, well, I should say the sex between Tyler and Marla, and then the morning between Jack and Marla. And it's just one of these awkward confrontations. This once again, this poor woman, she's a freak, but she's kind of sweet. Warner Brothers 2004 to 2008, I think dates. Yeah, I know it was one specific company that really had the problem because they saved money by not properly sealing them. Like a lot of the discs that are made are fine because they were properly sealed, especially around the outer edges. But the stuff that isn't is, um, starting to rot. Mold with moisture, yeah, I'm an earlier drier climate for most part, no oceans around. Project Mayhem. That part with Brad reminds me of Taxi Driver with De Niro looking into the mirror. Yeah, I think that's another one. Taxi Driver is totally a cousin to this. Um, and then later on, we were talking about a show earlier that is a lot like Fight Club. I felt like Joker, the Joaquin Phoenix one, is has a lot of Fight Club in it too. We spend time with the main protagonist of the story, and they're explaining to us their worldview and what's wrong with the world, and it's kind of hard not to agree with them. But then you just end up realizing it's like, oh no, this person's totally insane. Same with Travis Bickle. He spends the whole movie telling us what's wrong with the world. There's another movie, a narration. That shouldn't work like that. But Scorsese just doesn't care. If you know the rules and you break them properly, it works. But yeah, I agree. Taxi Driver is definitely a good. You could watch a double feature of this and Taxi Driver, or this and Joker. I mentioned The Graduate earlier. Identity, maybe with John Cusack. That's another one that works. Or you know what else is good too is Frailty with Bill Paxton. There's a little bit of that in here, like making you wonder what's going on with the people in the movie. I recommend all those. I needed to see Joker. I like the actor bad guy in Gladiator. Oh yeah, Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah. Joker one, very good. I recommend it. Joker Folie à Deux or whatever. I don't recommend. So here's the first dude to show up and try to be part of their cult. And when you first see this guy out here, you're like, what's going on now? And this, if the applicant is too old, tell him too old. If he's fat, too fat. If he waits 3 days without food, shelter, or encouragement, then welcome in. He can begin his training. So it's almost like they're making Jedi's or whatever, but instead it's just a damn cult. Once again, the story's getting so out of control, you kind of get distracted of what could be going on between Tyler and the narrator. It's almost just there to distract you. See Joker, then leave it at that. Do not watch the sequel. Yeah, yeah, that's my advice too, Jason. I actually was really interested in that sequel when it came out because um, that first one was pretty good. And when I heard they were going to make another one with Harley Quinn and there was going to be a musical, I was like, how are you going to do that? So just out of curiosity, I wanted to see it. But yeah, pretty disappointing. Way more bad movies with Harley Quinn than good movies. Uh, well, I should say way more, like two. I love Bill Paxton. Rip. Way many have told me look and sound like him, a younger brother. I love Bill Paxton. What did I just watch the other day that he was in? Um, but yeah, we like I said, I frequently watch movies at night that some of my favorites and show them to the missus one she's never seen. We watched Frailty, um, and I was explaining to her how good he is in that. I can't remember what the heck were we just watching that he was in. I don't know. Drawing a blank. Oh, Tombstone. We were watching Tombstone, and Bill Paxton in that is another fantastic role. It's super sympathetic. So their meatloaf's about to give up on the first try, but Robert Paulson turns around. Here's Space Monkeys. When he smacks this guy in the head, every time it makes me laugh. Like the first monkey shot into space, right in the back of the head. And that's all, I don't know, funny writing that the idea the members of their cult are the space monkeys. Funny stuff. Then here's Jared Leto's character. I believe his name's Angel Face or something like that, which is funny because, like I say, later on he gets it just smashed to bits. Yes, with Val. Yeah, yeah. I contend. I think it's possible. Tombstone is Val Kilmer's probably best role. He's in a bunch of good stuff, and he's good in a lot of stuff. But I don't know. Just watching him again in that, he's fantastic. He steals that whole movie. We all part of the same rotting compost heap. That bus driver's nose. Every time he gets on and off this bus, there's this old black dude with a jacked up nose. I'm sure he must have been a fighter or something because the cartilage in his nose is just putty. And they show him like two or three times, and every time they do, he like just fills up the frame, and it's amazing. It's like, yeah, you got your extra work because your nose is so disgusting. It's fascinating. When I saw this part in the first time, it made me crack up. talking about it's right after they've put the big smiley face in flames in the side of this building. Like they, set some of the offices on fire in an office building. So from the outside, it looks like a giant flaming smiley face. And it's on the news. And there's all the Project Mayhem members are all sitting around watching it. And Jared Leto's like, oh, she's hot, talking about the like news lady. And there's always the dipshit in the room who has to be like that. Like, forget the fact that we're watching an exploding building. Like, oh, pretty lady. Yeah. But even this just leads us into meeting the chief of police who they go and harass and threaten to cut off his balls or whatever. That's totally not needed. You could cut this little section of the movie and, save 10 minutes. Just trying to figure out a way to tighten this up for you, David Fincher. 220 is a little too long, but it's still perfect. The Full Metal Jacket buzz cut. Yeah, for sure. Ghost in the Darkness 2, but yes, Tombstone. I have the best memories other than that. Willow, because I saw that one as a kid. Yeah, Willow, and I mean he plays Elvis in True Romance. You don't ever see his face, but he's like, the thing. And then he was like, I don't know, a lot of people don't like that Doors movie, but he was a damn amazing Jim Morrison. Like he kind of looked like him and had that sort of whacked out feel, and supposedly his singing was so much better and cleaner than Jim Morrison's that they used Val Kilmer's voice for a lot of the like live songs and stuff rather than try to overdub and match it and all that. But yeah, I mean, he was Batman. He was the Saint. Val Kilmer, the Top Gun, Real Genius. You know what I mean? Like Val Kilmer, that's all he has nothing to be ashamed of. That's a quite a prestigious acting what do you call it, oeuvre. His portfolio is quite impressive. Yeah, this whole scene, I mean, it's funny, and then they use it later to show like when Tyler leans in and tells the guy he's going to cut his balls off, but then later on when we see it, they cut in Edward Norton so you can compare the two. But other than that, this scene could totally be gone. There, wet my whistle for the last 45 minutes. We're at the 1:34:40 mark. They've just busted into the bathroom and they've got the chief of police in there. Once again, heavy green filter because it's Fincher. He loves a green LUT. Forest Green LUT. That's a good name for an improv group. Val also did Billy the Kid. I didn't know that. He was great in The Doors. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gore Vidal's. I didn't know that. But then they do also kind of explain here, I guess. Well, I'm saying this is a bit of a wasted scene, but he explains, like, you need to be afraid at night because the people in our army are the people who, take out your trash and clean your laundry and do all this stuff, or the people who run your life. And that is scary, if you're in a super high place, the idea that all the people that make the world go are against you. And then, yeah, when they leave, they're all like high fiving and happy and stuff. And Brad Pitt gives Jared Leto this big like hug and rubs his head. And that's when Edward Norton has like these feelings of like jealousy. And like I mentioned earlier, the first time I saw this, I thought Edward Norton was probably in love with, uh, the Brad Pitt character, Tyler Durden. And then, so that sort of threw me off the track. Like, oh, there's like sort of this love jealousy thing here. And Edward Norton goes into kind of his feelings right before this because we're getting ready to crash the car. And that's when things really go south. That's when he starts putting it all together after the limo crash. Neil Young. I couldn't think of that guy's name. The bartender in this with these big pork chop sideburns looks like Neil Young. It's kind of funny though. Edward Norton, like he looks like he's built to fight in this. But he's so skinny, and we know after seeing him in American History X, like he can be jacked up. I'm assuming that probably had some chemical assistance because he's pretty buff in that. But it's like he still looks wimpy, but he also looks like he's been, training and fighting. So I don't know. Just once again, another perfect aspect of this movie. Everything's just right. So there's the part where I was talking about earlier, where after he beats up Jared Leto, then he explains like how he wants to, kill the pandas who wouldn't save their race and yada yada. And then I wanted to breathe smoke. And then we see him walk away as Brad Pitt lights up a cigarette. And there's Jared Leto's face completely destroyed. Disgusting. Yikes. Hey, have Cheetah will of you. Our friend Patrick is here. Welcome, Patrick. Nice to see you, my friend. How are you and the Cheetah tonight? So here this is the part where he crashes the limo, and this is one of the tip-offs. Edward Norton's character gets in through the driver's seat and then crawls over into the passenger seat, and then Tyler Durden gets into the driver's seat. So they both go in through the driver's side. There's all sorts of various little tip-offs so it works and you don't get caught with, well, how did they do that? Which is one of the reasons this movie is so highly watchable, is to go back and see all the different places they fooled you. The first rule of Project Mayhem is you do not talk about Project Mayhem. A lot of smoking in Fight Club. Yeah, yeah, true. True that. Dang, that baby's still awake. So there he drives into traffic, and you can kind of see the metaphor of like letting go, losing control, just letting go of the steering wheel and letting your life go where it takes you. But where it'll take you is off the rails and crashing into things. Once again, wisdom that is actually stupidity, but it's like masked as intelligence. It's terrible advice to let go of the car steering wheel and just let it take you where you want, unless you have a automatic driving car. And even then, I don't totally trust it. But this scene screams Fincher with like the heavy shadows, the dark, the rain, all the lights going on. It's clearly processed. Like they made it in I believe they put a car on a gimbal, which like shakes it, and then they, splash the rain with a hose, and they film it all in the studio. But it looks like they're driving on a highway. Greetings, VHS and Don. Welcome, Patrick. Nice to see you, my friend. Yeah, so here he's letting go of the steering wheel, and then Tyler's just chewing him out. So you have to like step back and think, well, this is actually just one nut sitting here arguing with himself, and these dudes in the back seat have to watch it all. And then every time we cut to them, they're looking at each other like this dude is totally nuts. But the first time you watch it, you think like, oh, they feel weird because these two are arguing and maybe the plan is flawed or whatever. It's like, no, this dude is just completely insane. And there, he not only lets go of the steering wheel, he gives it gas. But I don't understand though. He does put a seatbelt on. Coward. And then this car crash in slow motion. This movie has some of the most crazy like violence in it that's not violence. Like the stuff where the airplane in the beginning has like the big hole in it and the dude's like getting banged around the fuselage and blows out the window. Here with this car crash, them being rolling around in slow motion inside the car, like they make things that action movies look like are normal look like they're just brutal. Violence has consequences. That's why you shouldn't join fight clubs, dummy. And then there, once again, when they both crawl out of the car, they crawl out the same window. Or no, wait a minute. That's an upside down one. He's on the passenger side. So, maybe that is a mistake. There, we just had a near life experience. And then this part's interesting to me. They do like these like fade to black, like his consciousness is fading out. So it's like fades out and fades in and fades out. And you hear him like, once again, Tyler's just crazy ideas. You'll wear leather clothes, you'll climb the rich, thick kudzu vines that wrap the Sears Tower. He's just got like almost this like preacher quality to his thoughts on what the world should be. And as this dude's got a concussion or whatever and is going in and out of consciousness, he's like having these wild man thoughts. Once again, Fincher making an old, like peeling room full of peeling paint look like it's just a masterful. Like when the background blurs and you get that bokeh view, it looks like just frames the characters perfect. Fincher's a master. Helena Bonham Carter was so good in Fight Club. Yeah, yeah, I do agree. This is probably my favorite role of hers, I would guess. She's very good in that Alice in Wonderland. She's what, the Queen of Hearts. Um, but in general, I still haven't seen Sweeney Todd. I heard she's really good in Sweeney Todd. Um, but other than that, yeah, I'm not. She's not one of my like top faves, but she's pretty awesome the times I've seen her. She's actually pretty good in that Tim Burton Planet of the Apes. Her and Michael Clark Duncan, I think, are probably the two best things in that movie. And who's it? Paul Giamatti plays like an orangutan. So here he wakes up from his concussion of being in the car accident, and the place is just like the space monkeys have tripled, and you can see like there's just all sorts of plans for mayhem and everything going on. Thus, Project Mayhem. There's chicanery afoot, I say. There, and they've even got it organized: disinformation, mischief, arson. Well, that's nice that arson is right up there. And here's Jared Leto with his busted up face, looking like Lon Chaney or something. It's one thing to dye your hair bleach blonde, but to dye your eyebrows too, that's a big commitment. That's pretty terrifying. He looks like Max Headroom. And then once again, he gives an indication of where his character motivation comes from. He's like, my father dumped me and now Tyler dumped me. The second rule is do not ask questions. Yeah, I mentioned that at the beginning of this stream. That's, the whole thing with we don't talk about Fight Club. It's like, well, this movie's got a big surprise ending to it or a twist. You shouldn't tell people who haven't seen this movie about it. So therefore, we don't talk about Fight Club. You're just supposed to see it. So here's where Marla shows up, and she's her most sympathetic here because she's not being crazy and wild. She's just sort of calm and she doesn't appear to be on as much drugs as she's usually on or whatever. And he explains where Tyler's gone. Tyler went away. And she just looks at him like, you're a nut. And the first time you see it, you're like, what's wrong with her? And then, after you know what's going on, you're like, once again, this poor woman. She's in this relationship with a complete lunatic. Here's where they bring Bob back with the bullet hole in his head. You can see me perk up right away because it's just so insane. Like, they bring the body in, they lay it down. You don't know which one of the space monkeys it is. And then they're talking about it. And they're like, they shot Bob, and they pull the mask off, and you see Meatloaf, but then like his head just falls out, like the split in his brain. And this scene, not necessarily needed, but pretty awesome, where they blow up that like golden ball, the piece of corporate art, and it takes out a Starbucks. But then we get like the big 3D giant metal ball rolling at us, like Indiana Jones or some sort of Wile E. Coyote adventure or something. It went smooth until they shot Bob. And then here's when they pull off the mask and we just see Meatloaf's face before all his brains just peel out. Like, yep, there you go. Hi. Yeah, and here's what I feel like encapsulates. He explains to him, "You're running around with ski masks, doing terrors. What did you think was going to happen?" And then they all turn it as to like, "Oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing." And that's how I feel about the people that started the real life fight clubs. It's like you totally missed the point of the movie. No matter how hard we try to explain it to you, you're still going to be stupid. I don't know why I turned into Jerry Seinfeld. Who are these people? Why are they in fight clubs? In Project Mayhem, we have no names. In Death, we have a name, and it's Robert Paulson. Rip Bob. Poor big breasted Bob. I know, right? Sitting there safe between Bob's tits, hanging the way you think of gods. His name is Robert Paulson. And then when they all start chanting it, and you can just see the look on his face like, oh no, trying to convince these people of what's really going on here is going to be very hard. And then later on, when he's trying to like track where Tyler's been, and he walks by like I think it's a kitchen, and there's just like three or four people standing around going, "His name is Robert Paulson." And now trying to figure out where's Tyler been. And then this is where it starts to, it almost gets to be like a damn time travel movie. Trying to figure out the different things that fold into each other starts to make your head explode. Like, well, maybe he did this, but he knows that because I know that. But maybe he was thinking about something different to try to throw me off the track. Like, it becomes so headachy at this point. This is where I feel like it kind of starts to slow down. Like, a bunch of this stuff I think they could use less of, but it does. It's basically the third act, you know. We've been through this whole movie. We now understand what's going on. Now we got to, follow Jack around while he undoes what he thinks he did. Yeah, all this is super good. Once again, Fincher at his best. It's lots of insert shots of like airplanes landing and taking off, and shots of over skylines of cities and stuff. That's Fincher's the master of that. The insert shot, just like Paps was saying. We all have known a Bob in our lives, right? I love her laundromat pawn shop routine. Yeah, yeah. When she goes in and just like they're doing like a walk and talk, so the two characters are talking and we're kind of evolving the plot while we're moving. And her walk and talk is just goes right in through the front door of a laundromat, takes out some clothes out of the dryer, walks straight to the back of the place, comes out of an alley, and then goes into a pawn shop and sells them. He has facial reconstructive surgery every 6 months. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't know. They say Edward Norton's a big pain in the ass to work with. Um, like I guess when he made American History X, they said like he got into an argument with the director and basically had the director locked out of the editing room while he re-edited the movie. Like supposedly the version that most people see of American History X is the Edward Norton version. I think there's a oh god, what's dude's name? Tony X or something like that. Whatever dude's name is. Um, that guy supposedly has a director's cut too. I don't know if I've ever seen that one. But I guess on the Hulk, that was another big problem too. That's why they replaced him with Mark Ruffalo. Is Edward Norton just wanted basic, control of the movie and wanted to control how the finished product looked. He directed a movie. I don't remember if I ever saw it. It was like him and Ben Stiller as rabbis, maybe, or priests. I don't remember. But he sure was good in Primal Fear. I recommend that one if you've never seen it. The Richard Gere sort of courtroom thriller. So here's where he calls Marla and tries to get to the bottom of it. It's like all the times we were together, that was me or with Tyler, and then she's sort of explains it. Is this a trick? Were we having sex or were we making love? Tyler Durden, you fucking idiot. Uh, Interesting about American History X. I'm curious about the original director's vision. Yeah, I enjoy American History X. I thought it was kind of a master work when I saw it. The black and white stuff is a little too artsy or whatever, but that was the independent film '90s. It sort of made sense. But it's a powerful film. But like the curb stomp scene and stuff, once you've seen that, you never forget it. Now this part never sort of it always I don't get it. Like Tyler's been gone. He's been going around searching for him. So he's in his hotel room and he's talking to Marla and he figures out that he is indeed Tyler. And at that point, he turns around and Tyler's in the room with him, but now all of a sudden he has a shaved head. Like I guess he's a space monkey too. I don't know. I've always wondered. It's like, what's the explanation of it? And he's dressed like a rock star. He's got like this big furry coat on and a mesh shirt. Stunning '90s film. Love it. Yeah, American History X is fantastic. It's um, and like I was mentioning him, Edward Norton, like all buffed up with like the big Nazi tattoo and stuff. He looks scary, like him bald with the goatee and stuff. He strikes a frightening Nazi. Here's where we do the classic unravel. I love these in movies where they explain to us what's been going on in the movie that we haven't been catching. I mentioned Sixth Sense, Usual Suspects. There's, frequent movies, Identity, I mentioned earlier, where we get a sense something's going on, but we need some explanation. And then they finally show it to us with like a little quick montage and all the scenes that we saw them one way, but they were really another way. This one handles that scene very well. I think Usual Suspects is probably the king of all of them because I still get goosebumps when I watch it. But here, like him just sitting in his room talking to Tyler, and then they cut to him sitting alone talking to no one, and then we see shots of them fighting, and then the same scene shot again, except with just Edward Norton there. And they do it in this like shaky cam style, like they've been doing the whole movie with like where the camera occasionally will just rumble. You feel like everything's falling apart. You are not your money. You are not how much you have in the bank. I think the flamboyant Tyler represents another break in his psyche as he comes to the realization. Yeah, I mean, it. Like I said, this is probably the first time I've really thought about it. Probably just him being a space monkey, but it is weird that he just disappears. Then all of a sudden he shows back up in his kind of signature tousled hair, and his look is a little bit different. He's got a goatee now, and then yeah, him and Tyler get into this big like crazy fight in the basement with the truck full of explosives, and and then they show it on the video camera so we can see it from like an objective third person point of view. So here's more scenes of Edward Norton running. That's kind of my issue with the third act of this. Like I said, it drags a little bit. It's a lot of him just running. It adds pacing to the movie. It feels like it's not closing slow. It feels like it's going, but it's just kind of like redundant. I don't know. Once again, more shots of planes and Edward Norton on the plane. Uh-oh, all the space monkeys are gone. Yeah, just all these flashbacks to us seeing how the soap was made and how you can make like all the bombs and stuff that they're making for their big explosions. And I guess I think this takes place. I want to say in Delaware or is it Rhode Island? Delaware, whatever. Uh, um, but there is like one state that has all the credit card companies in it, And that's kind of the logic of this movie is they go to, I think it's Delaware. I don't remember. And then the scene where he gets captured by the cops is, it doesn't need to be there, but it does kind of show how deep all this runs. Like, no matter every time he thinks he's got, like, oh, I've talked to someone, I've explained to them how this is bad. They're just like, whatever you say, sir. It's like, oh, you're all nuts and in on it. Here's the part where he goes to Marla then and he tells her, like, look, I'm crazy. You need to get out of my life. Take this money, get on this bus, get out of here. And then when she gets on the bus, there's like these shadowy figures that like stand up and surround her as the bus drives off. It looks like Jacob's Ladder or something. Redundant. Look at, thank you. Thank you. Sarah, I'm glad you made it if for nothing else for that. Here's where he sits down with her at this restaurant and he's explaining to her, and the waiter comes over and is explaining to him like, you don't want the soup because of what Durden does to food. This actor or the waiter is the lead singer of the band Live, Lightning Crashes and all that. Apparently they were him and David Fincher were friends because he directed a live video or something like that, and he turns up as the waiter there. But he's got like the heavy duty black eye and like the blue marks around the neck and stuff. 100% Sarah, his clothes are raver pimp status here. Definitely not rural, and there's nothing here. Oh, you're in Rhode Island, Sarah? Interesting connection. Yeah, Delaware. There include Chase, Discover, Backyard, U.S., with some operations of Bank of America and City as well. So yeah, Delaware is the place where they're all located for some reason, all the major credit card companies. So there is actually some, much like the napalm thing made out of orange juice. It's like, no, there's some truth there. They just leave out one or two bits of information so people who see this don't get in trouble. I love this when she explains to him, like, look, you're smart, you're funny, you're spectacular in bed. And they cut to his expression, like, oh, why'd you have to say that? Come on. You're making this so difficult for me. She's another one where I'm only used to ever seeing her speak in an American accent. So when I see her interviewed and she has that thick British accent, I was like, what? Yeah, so here's where he hails the bus. He goes and stands in front of it, and it almost runs him over. And then he puts her on the bus, and then you see like people stand up and surround her. Like yeah, it looks like Jacob's Ladder. It's this creepy, ominous moment. Space monkeys are everywhere. There in the background, um, you can see the marquee for a movie theater, and it says 7 years in Tibet. And then at a different scene, I think you can see a marquee for oh Jesus, what's it called? The one with Helena Bonham Carter, the whatever her big Oscar movie was. I can't remember what it is. Um, the one that got her famous that nobody ever saw. And then later on, I believe there's one for Edward Norton as well. Too. Oh, there's one. What's in the background? People versus Larry Flint. There it was. So yeah, I knew they had the main three actors like their big movies were in a marquee in that one shot. Yeah, City Dine, Mastercard. Wow, yeah, they're explaining it all. Hmm. I don't know. Here, the contrast is too hard. Some of the shots, like it looks like a skull. Like his eyes are so sunken with the dark shadows and stuff. This is funny. He explains all this to this detective, and the guy's like, "I'm gonna go check out this," and he leaves the room, and the other three cops in there are like, "You said that if you ever came in here, we had to take your balls," and he's like, I mean it." He's like, "Yeah, you said you'd say that." If you erase the debt record, we all back to zero. I was talking earlier about Mr. Robot, the TV show that basically so much of this is in that, and that's one of the main things they were doing in there too. I was explaining to my better half that Fight Club and American Psycho are basically where Mr. Robot came from. And if you enjoy Fight Club and Mr. Robot or American Psycho, I recommend you check out Mr. Robot. Somebody somewhere made a noise. Oh, now I gotta watch it again. I'm used to her as Beatrix from Harry Potter. Yeah, that's probably where I do know her from after that. Like I say, the Queen of Hearts. This is what I think of when I think of HBC. Yeah, you know me. I love a little bit of nitroglycerin in my orange juice. On a good morning. Sure. So there, they pin him on the table. They pull his pants down. They're getting ready to cut his balls off, and then they all stop to like have this moment of where they talk to the police chief, and everybody freezes and just looks at each other. He's almost like Pee Wee Herman in this scene. Like, yes. And then yeah, once again, just flat out comedy. I don't know how anybody could see this not as comedy, where he's in his underwear in a trench coat, holding a gun, but he's holding it all like wacky and crazy and silly. And that's when he tells him the first person that comes out this door gets a lead salad. Well, that's the most lame concept I've ever heard. You're gonna get a lead salad, buddy. And then now him running. Once again, more Edward Norton running, almost getting hit. Lots of jaywalking in this movie. Lots of jaywalking. Always with the wetted down streets. Fincher will never let a street be dry. Like that's a rule in movies that once you kind of learn it, you notice it always. But when you shoot outside at night, you need to wet down the streets so the lights of the streets like reflect off the street, or otherwise it will look like very dull and boring. So in movies, it's always just rained. And this is classic. No matter where he goes, every street looks like somebody just hosed it down like a big rainstorm ended 5 minutes ago. But I mentioned I feel like Fincher's kind of uh, I don't know, a stepson of Ridley Scott or Tony Scott. You know, the neon lights, the crazy atmosphere, lots of smoky rooms where you can see like, the beams of light and everything. Yeah, this is almost lime. He's got just this green filter on it. It gives it a tone and a mood, but looking at it on this HD transfer, yeah, it looks like Kermit the Frog's looking at it. And where did Tyler Durden's chipped tooth come from too? That's another one I'd like to know. I always thought it was when they were fighting later on, but he's got the chipped tooth there already. I need a movie about Tyler Durden while Jack was asleep. 2 days in the life of Tyler Durden. So here's the big white van in the parking garage, and it's full of explosives. And before 9/11, there was a real there was a first attempt on trying to blow up the World Trade Centers where they did exactly this. They parked a bunch of utility vans that they rented full of explosions, and there was a big explosion there and everything. So when they did this, it was kind of controversial. Like there was discussion of is this tacky or whatever to sort of replicate this scene. I do like the fur coat with the tank top full of like I don't know what is that. It looks like uh, Las Vegas hotels or something on it. I liked Mr. Robot, but it started getting a little convoluted the further it went on. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the ending, but the first like three, four seasons or whatever, it was pretty damn great. Are you just scrolling through the movie? No, no. I mean, I'm watching it, but um, no, I'm letting her play out in real time. We are at the 207:40 mark, and we're to the point where Max shuts off how long is left. So I believe it's 2:20, so we should have about 12 minutes, 13 minutes left. Right now, they're doing the classic, when a person has to disarm a bomb in a movie, and it's like red wire, green wire, black wire, no green wire, never touch the green wire. So here he's having an argument with his own mind, like his imaginary friend, and trying to decide, like, I think it's the green wire. Don't use the green wire. No, the white wire. So it's a funny take on like kind of a classic movie bit. That's right. His tank top, the one I said I thought maybe had casinos on it. It's a bunch of porno magazines. That's right. Like you can even see in one of the shots, there's like a naked lady laying down with her legs spread on the like. It's just his tank top's covered in porn magazines. Well, I shouldn't call her a naked lady. I don't know. She might be a real bitch. I don't. I love that scene there though, where they get in the fight and then Brad Pitt takes the fur coat off and he does the Bruce Lee like, and even here he keeps doing it like, "Ah." And that's the parts they kept showing in the original marketing that made me not want to see it. They're like Fight Club with Brad Pitt, and then he's all. "Ah." I'm like, that doesn't look like anything I want to see. And then when I watched it, and I'm like, oh no, it's this crazy plot about schizophrenic man and terrorism and a person losing their damn mind. Yeah, he keeps doing. "Oh." Yeah, I don't know. This Brad Pitt's one of those actors where when I first used to like after Legends of the Fall, let's say, I was kind of like, all right, enough with pretty boy Brad Pitt, 7 years in Tibet and all this. Like, he's not my kind of actor. But then with Seven and Fight Club and True Romance and like after just so many movies, I had to give in to Brad Pitt. Ocean's 11 was like, no, Brad Pitt is strangely gone from being someone who I feel like I should make fun of to somehow maybe my favorite actor. So there, he throws him down the steps. And that's classic Hollywood right there. There's this whole damn movie where they use CGI for everything. And then how do you get a, shot of a guy being thrown down the steps? You find some jackass will throw him down the steps, himself down steps. And that dude does roll like four flights. It's brutal. There's an awesome line in the beginning when he's like, when you have a gun barrel in your mouth, you only speak in vowels. And then he's like, can you think of anything? And he's like, well, I guess it all starts with a woman named Marla Singer. And then he tells this whole story that we've been watching. So now when they cut back to the opening scene and he's got this gun in his mouth and Brad Pitt's like, you got anything to say? And he's like, nope, still can't think of anything. And Tyler Durden goes, flashback humor. That's a kind of amazing, awesome line in the writing. Like every time I see that, it makes me laugh. Flashback humor. In this final scene up on this sky, like skyscraper up on this big, where you look out the window and you see all the different buildings. And then the iconic scene at the end when, he explains to Marla, you met me at a very strange time in my life. And then we watch the buildings explode while the Pixies play. Like, that's kind of an amazing way to end a movie. Even though in movies, the bad guy isn't supposed to technically win. Like, theoretically in most movies the Jack character would figure out what was going on, take his own life and then somehow keep the buildings from being destroyed. Not this movie. That's why it's awesome. I loved his scenes in Thelma and Louise. Yeah, I think that's where, like I say, he seems like a person who would rub me the wrong way. Um, what was it called? Crossing the Tracks or something like that. There was a movie with him and Ricky Schroeder where they like were on like a high school track team or something. And that was like, I remember girls in high school fawning over Brad Pitt, and then Thelma and Louise, and then Legends of the Fall, where he had like this beautiful mane of hair. And that's when I was like, Brad Pitt just is not my actor. He's like this pretty boy, whatever. I don't know. He's not what I'm into. He's early version of Channing Tatum or something. So then now, after decades of him just doing stuff over and over, it's like, ooh, Brad Pitt's going to be in this. I'm down. 59th points out 12 Monkeys. Yeah, he's awesome in 12 Monkeys. Uh, Ben says, only watched one season of Mr. Robot. Always meant to go back. Yeah, me and the missus started watching it back around Halloween, and we got into the first episode of season 3, and that's the day Prime took it off. So it was gone out of our lives for months and months, and then Tubi brought it back, and we were like, so we quick binge watched the rest of it. But yeah, I recommend Mr. Robot. It's very good till the end. Dirt and Final Form Close 77. Thelma Louise. Yeah, the Thelma Louise is when he first started to get that like world's most like beautiful man. Him with these perfect abs and like lovely hair and perfect skin. Well, not so much perfect skin. That's one of the things that always amazed me about Brad Pitt. It's like his face is kind of like I don't know. He must have had acne when he was younger or something, but still pretty damn handsome. Thelma, Thelma and Louis, Ridley and Scott. Brad is good. 7 Years Tibet was a rough. Saw that in the theater. Yeah, that looked kind of long and boring. That's one of the few of his I've never gotten around to. The book's ending was darker and more ambiguous. I think I heard. Sarah, care to comment on that? You're our current expert on the literary version. There's where he puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger, and you see like the cheeks vibrate and light up and stuff. That's awesome use of CGI. And then they cut to Brad Pitt's character, and you see the smoke come out of his mouth. So much cool stuff with them sharing this character. What's that smell? And then as he says it, a perfect smoke ring comes out. I remember this part right here was where my dad tapped out. I remember watching this movie with him and telling him it was one of my favorites. And he got to the part where the dude shot himself in the mouth, and he's like, no one can shoot themselves in the mouth and live. And I'm like, people do it all the time. You see it on the news. There's that famous Judas Priest guy that did it or whatever. And he's just like, nope, not having it. Out of all the insane things going on in this movie, the idea that this dude could shoot himself in the mouth and miss seems very believable to me. Hell, that was even a concern in American Werewolf in London. The lady was trying to convince the dude to kill himself, and he's like, no, you can't do that. What if you miss? So here the space monkeys bring Marla. We've killed off Tyler. Well, whatever, the villainous alter ego of Tyler. And that's kind of the rule in movies. I mention it all the time. Once we kill the bad guy, wrap the movie up. Everything that happens after the bad guy dies is completely useless. I don't need a bunch of character development after the story's been told. So there, Brad Pitt it disappears after Edward Norton shoots himself in the throat, and the movie, quickly wraps up as it should. And once again, instead of being like, this dude is totally out of his damn mind, they're just amazed at how strong he is. Like, look at this tough son of a bitch. He shot himself in the mouth. And then I guess kind of the idea is either he's full of shit or like the shooting himself in the head sort of gave him like a lobotomy. Like it kind of corrected what was wrong with him. And here's where he is. He's like, you met me at a very strange time in my life. And he reaches over and holds her hand, and the two of them romantically watch the world, crumble apart. And somehow it's oddly romantic, even though it's effed up like that. And then we jam out to the Pixies. Where is my mind? Wow, yeah, that's awesome, dude, to see all those skyscrapers explode and everything. You know, once again, movie violence always awesome, real violence scary. When you see stuff destroyed in real life, it's terrifying, but in on a movie like this, pretty damn cool. So that was David Fincher's masterpiece, in my opinion, 1999's Fight Club. I thank you for joining me and watching it. Let's see here. Sarah says, yes, like I said, the ending in the book better than the movie. Y'all should really read it. I think you've talked me into it. I may have to read it. But regardless, I have just watched it now for the, let's say, 25th time in my life. No telling. I've watched this one so many times. As you can see, I was quoting lines that weren't even happening yet. Um, but yeah, this is a wonderful movie. I think because I say it's got so many different levels and ways to look at it, and you need to watch it once, and then you have to watch it again to see everything that you missed the first time. Um, I'm incredibly impressed how well it holds up, even though some of the CGI is spotty here and there. Overall, pretty damn amazing. I don't know. Fight Club rules. So yeah, watch it again as a comedy, as I would recommend. Think about all the funny lines, all the whole message of the movie that this guy who's got life figured out is actually insane, much like myself. Nah, Jack wouldn't have the to actually shoot himself, right? Yeah, that's the thing with him, with Jack. He's kind of a waffler. But I thank you for joining me. I encourage you, if you enjoyed this watch along, to join me for some other one. They usually pop up. I don't really try to advertise them too much in case I need to change my schedule. But there's a giant library of them to watch on my Night Owl Movie Talk homepage on YouTube, and also the show is available as a podcast on your favorite podcast provider: Spotify, iHeartRadio, yada, 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 Podbean. I don't know even what Podbean is. Apple Music. You got the iTunes? I got the iTunes. I'm on there. But I suggest you find me there. Find me on any social networking, yada, yada, yada. Buy a shirt, share, like, subscribe. Be sure to subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I thank you all for joining me more than anything. So much fun from all the people who joined us: Ben Grimm, Sarah D, 59 Survivor of VHS, Cinephile Sanity, Anthony Chabot, Jinja Ninja was here. The whole crew. Thank you all for being here. You're the honorary guest host of the show. I can't do this without you. So thank you for joining me, and I will wish you all green grass and high tides forever. Adios, my friends.